Blog Talk Radio.
Well, hello everyone. Hello everyone. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Extraordinary Life, where you can get empowered, encouraged, and inspired all at the same time. I am your host, Sade Dennis, and thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you all have had a wonderful time of just a good Merry Christmas and time with family and friends. Today, we have a wonderful show for you all. We're going to be talking about the power of reflection, and we have a wonderful guest today. We have the awesome person of Mr. Charles Dennis, my husband, and my best friend. So, Charles, say hello to our guest.
Hello, everyone. How are you this afternoon? And Sade, thank you for having me on your show.
Absolutely. So I'm so excited, first of all, honey, to have you on. We talked about this a little bit before, and it's something that, you and I always talk about, the power of reflection. Many times I know that folks, including myself, have made so many mistakes because we're not reflective. We don't see the power, the value of looking back for a brief while, not totally, but just to see our mistakes and to see how we can move forward. So what can you share with our guests today about, the power of reflection?
Well, two things about reflection is first, reflection, one of the most important keys is first that reflection involves first self-examination. A lot of times, it's very easy to point out what someone else contributed to something that unfortunately happens to us. It happens in life. There are people that are going to mistreat us. There are people that are going to do us wrong. There are people that are going to malign us and speak evil of us. But it goes with the territory, if you know what I mean. But one of the things I want to point everyone to is that's that key piece, self-examination. What do I contribute to? What have I been contributing to the equation, if you will, that has caused the situation to not necessarily go into my favor? And a lot of times it does go back to there is no self-examination because there is no true reflection. Let me tell you what reflection is, from a defining standpoint. It's a noun, it's a thing. It's not necessarily a physical action, but basically it says it's often defined as an obscure or indirect criticism. And now some people will hear that directly and say, "You want me to criticize myself? Why, I can never do that." It means holding yourself to a high regard. So one of the first principles right off the bat I want to be able to give you, we have first self-examination. And self-examination, if you want to put a sub-point underneath that, that involves, indirect criticism. In the crevices in your own private time, you need to ask yourself the hard questions. What could I have done that I could have done better to prevent the situation from happening? What can I do on the contrary? I want to be positive from a positive standpoint. What can I do continually that will enable me or to aid me in getting the favorable results that I'm looking for, that I have been looking for? It also,
now, tell me, honey. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It also means a point. Sometimes reflection means you have to turn back, and that's one of the another point. Sometimes we have to go back. Sometimes you have to revisit that situation that you've seen that appears to be hopeless, that appears to be agonizing, that appears to be uncomfortable in order to have some type of growth or in order to achieve results. It's kind of like when you go to the gym, the first few days back. So the reason why some people don't stay in the gym is because when you work out, because the muscles have not been utilized, you're extremely sore. Does that mean you're not supposed to go back? No, it's just an indication that the muscles are letting you know, hey, I've not been used in a while, so now I need to acclimate myself to this, and then once I acclimate myself to this, then I'll be fine. The same thing we have to do mentally. Sometimes we have to put ourselves through the mental exercises, the who's, the what's, the when's, the where's, the why's, the how's. We have to identify the stressors, or you have to identify stressors that have caused us to make improper decisions, but we also have to find, consequently, the motivators as well that have helped us make right decisions. Are we hanging around the right people? Are we feeding our minds with things that are constructive? Do we spend time thinking about the right things, the correct things, or do we just fill our minds with a bunch of junk? I always find it a very dangerous notion, especially this time of year where people say, well, it's the holidays, I just want downtime. I just need downtime. I want to go somewhere and not think. Well, that's a very dangerous place to be, where you ever want to be somewhere where you don't want to think, because a lot of times that's what happens. We lower our mental defenses, and we carry that problem into the new year. We carry that situation, that mindset into the new year, and what happens is that we hide it behind being festive. Well, then there's something wrong with that, because the simple fact is, when you plan those holiday activities, especially this time of year, you put thought into it. When you wanted to buy someone a gift, you put thought into it. When you wanted to go on that vacation this time of year, or take time off from work, spend time with family and friends and relatives that you don't get a chance to see that very often, you put thought into it. Well, if that's the case, why don't we put more thought into our dreams and our aspirations and our goals? You see what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Why do we find that so laborious?
Right. Now, question, though, you mentioned as well the people that we have around us. In this time of reflection, especially as we're headed into the new year, who is it that we can have around us? I mean, is it a trusted few people that, we have made ourselves accountable to say, hey, have we done a good job in this particular area? I mean, how much should we invest into these other types of relationships, or should we just be loners? I mean, a lot of times, I have been, guilty of being a loner. There are times when I've had, that trusted few. But, what type of insight can you share with us about that?
Well, the dangerous thing is, and I'm glad you brought that up, about being a loner. The problem with being a loner is that you counsel with yourself. You reason with yourself, and guess what? Because you're by yourself, you have no one to bounce the ideas off of. So therefore, what you could be talking about, even thinking, could be completely incorrect. But if you don't trust someone else with that idea or that thought, you don't have anyone to bounce it off of. And this is that. Let me give a caveat to that. That doesn't mean bouncing it off around of people just because we know. You hit on something key, which is another point of reflection around this time of year. Reflection is only meant to really get the engine going, to help you strategize your goals and what goals and objectives you have for the upcoming year. It's kind of like before we go on road trips, I always make sure that the car has all the vital fluids and that everything is tip-top shape. That's the same thing that reflection will do, and at this time as we close out one year and begin to another, so you don't wind up saying, I wish I could have accomplished this, I wish I could have accomplished that at the end of the year. So to go back, so slightly digressed, I know, but if you allow me to go back, what that really means, honestly, when it comes to the crevices in your mind, I'm not just talking about regular ideas, I'm talking about God-given ideas. You could count on, I may say one or two people, because you can't trust your vision with everybody. You can't trust your dreams with everybody. You can't trust your desires with everybody. Because by the time you get everyone's input, by the time you get mama and them input and papa and them input, cousin Pookie and them input, guess what? You either have more energy, or guess what? You just as confused and you just discouraged as you were from the onset. So sometimes we have to take that authority away from people, not even put that pressure on people to be able to speak into our lives like that. Some people know they're not authorized to do it, and we try to make them something that they're not. You have to identify those people from the beginning, those trusted few, those people that know your stuff, that are people in your relationship. You have given them permission to examine your life thoroughly and read you the riot act when they deem it's necessary, because they know you. So the trusted few, when it comes to it's time to make sure that you're reflecting on the right things and that it's going to propel you to proper action, has to already come from people who are already within your intimate circle, not your circle, your intimate circle.
Exactly. And a question for you as well. How can we prevent, I would say, I wouldn't necessarily call it keeping up with the Joneses, but as we go into our time of reflection and in order to propel us, okay, into the future, how can we identify, the difference between propelling ourselves forward or, versus, keeping up with the Joneses? Because a lot of times as we go out to perhaps share or get information or just share our vision with people, sometimes I know that we make mistakes and share them with the wrong people, thinking that, well, hey, maybe they can help me move my vision forward. But then they end up being the wrong ones.
Well, see, sometimes, again, and sometimes, and those type of things, for those in your audience, who are Christian and by from our proclaiming in Christ, we understand the power of prayer. We understand that through prayer, through, reflection sometimes can lead us into prayer where we get to a quiet, very still place where God can speak to us. And as a result of that, sometimes even through situations, God will show us, He will set up situations that will enable us and empower us to see who it is we can share our vision with. I find it very hard to believe when people say that they have a vision and they have to tell everybody about it, then you don't have a true vision. You have a big dream, but you don't have a vision. There's a difference. There's a difference between a vision and there's a dream, because a dream is something that we can all have. We all had dreams when we were younger of being, I had a dream once, many moons ago, of being in the NFL. You had a dream of being a performer. Someone had a dream of it. But when you get a hold of a vision, there's an assignment attached to it.
Okay.
And you need key people around you in order to complete that assignment. So what winds up happening is that once you have those people around you, it'll happen through situations. It'll happen through sometimes. Here's something that we don't think about. Sometimes the people that we overlook because we try to put someone else in their spot that doesn't belong there.
Okay.
Yeah, so I hope I answered your question. So
absolutely. So it sounds like what you're saying is we there's some responsibility and accountability that we have to hold ourselves to. In other words, we misalign. We miss the mark many times when we are finding people or just identifying with people that we can share our visions with. So what I hear you saying is that in our time of reflection, in order to propel us forward, we have to be prayerful, and especially for those of us who believe in the power of prayer, be prayerful and deliberate with that prayer to determine those few people, perhaps, that we need to have there to help us be reflective and to propel us forward.
And also, let me be very clear about this as well. Sometimes we tend to, how can I say it? In this time of reflection as well, as well as miscasting people, sometimes we don't even have the skill set to carry out the vision. I said the vision comes with an assignment. Well, in order to carry out an assignment, you have to have the proper key. You have to have the proper keys. If you don't have the proper keys, and what I mean by keys, I'm talking about education. I'm talking about sometimes we don't have enough experience in that area. That doesn't mean you don't stop pursuing the vision. That means you have to prepare yourself for the journey. So if I can give someone another key, they say, during this time, when we have goals and objectives and when there are things that we haven't necessarily gotten to that we want to get to, we need to ask ourselves the tough questions besides that, which goes under, have I done everything that I've done? Have you taken classes? Have you read books? Have you surrounded yourself? And this goes back to your question that you just asked me previously. Have you surrounded yourself with successful people that don't mind pouring success into other people? I'm not talking around, here, hi, how you doing? This is my business. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about surrounding yourself and strategically aligning yourself with people through relationship. See, I'm not talking about just meeting people and just by happenstance, we try to get them to buy off or to sign off on what we want. That's not what I'm alluding to at all. What I'm strictly alluding to is I'm asking, have we done enough legwork in that area? How much do you know about that thing? So that, and I know I'm relating it to goals and objectives, but when we're reflecting, the power of reflection, you should be reflecting on something.
Absolutely.
It shouldn't be some inanimate object. If I sit down now in the back office and just sit and think, well, what am I thinking about? What am I expecting to get out of it?
Right.
What are you aiming towards at the end of this thought session? If I don't have any thoughts or goals, that I can put down on paper that may not be fully complete, but have an idea of what it is I'm doing, then I'm just sitting back there daydreaming. To be quite frank with you, your daydreaming.
Absolutely.
If you're goal, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I was just saying, honey, that I find it interesting when you're talking about being strategic. I know that I have been to several, let's say networking events, and what I often see people make the mistake of, they think, well, I'll carry a box of 500 cards and I'll pass them out to everyone I see, as opposed to, and this is what I often share with my clients, my coaching clients, is that instead of just doing that, what they should do is to study who's going to be there. If they can find out perhaps from a program or a pamphlet or any of the, let's say, advertisements, who's going to be there, as much as possible, and be strategic with making those acquaintances, if you will. So in other words, instead of just walking around handing your card to everybody, okay, maybe it's those, 10 or even 5 encounters that will help you get to your next level. So you're being strategic and not just work in the room. Work in the room used to be one of the older models, but can you be strategic and do your homework? If there's a speaker there, Google that speaker. Find out about that speaker. How can the speaker, what can you provide the speaker? What can the speaker provide for you? Or if it's not a speaker, that VIP guest or what have you, and be strategic about, let's say, approaching that person. Is there synergy? Is there a natural match that can happen? And it's not, it's great to meet nice people, but, you'll save yourself plenty of gas. You save yourself plenty of other resources by not just going out of here like a chicken with their head cut off and just passing out the entire box of business cards thinking that, okay, hey, something's going to happen here. That's not being strategic.
Exactly. And, I actually have 4 keys for your listening audience. Are you familiar when we were younger, there was a drink, and I'm sure it's out now, it was called Fit. Remember those fruit drinks or what have you that, they were like the Fit Me Out High Seas or whatever?
Yeah.
Well, if you take that acronym, I'll go through them very quickly, and then I'll elaborate on them. The first key is be strategic. You just alluded to it. Every networking event is not meant for you to go. Just because someone is speaking on the topic that you're talking about, they might be a paid speaker speaking on that topic, and they may be traveling across the country. They may have to leave to get on an airplane. That might not be the best time for you to go up and try to introduce them and say, hey, my name is so-and-so, and I do X, Y, and Z, and, give them your life story and the vision that you believe that you're called to do, especially if they're in a hurry. You have to pick your spots. You have to pick the moments of who it is that and you also have to trust God and know that, those strategic alliances will come naturally to you. A lot of times we try to go and force something we try to put a square peg into a round hole, and by assuming someone is in the same field that we have an interest in, that instantly that makes us strategically aligned with them. Well, let me be very practical with you. Why would someone already in a field want to give you information? They don't know you. There's no relationship, and you could be, and I hate to say it, you may be a potential competitor of theirs sometime in the future. So people are going to be very guarded with the information, the type of information that they furnish to you, especially in a networking environment. Instead, be strategic. Get a business card. Say thank you. Send them a thank you note. Say thank you very much. It was a pleasure meeting you. I enjoyed your talk on X, Y, and Z. And, if possible, if sometime in the future, if I have some questions, is it okay if I contact you? If not, could you put me in the direction of some information I can continue to read on in this field? I'm very interested in it. There's a way to form strategic alliances. One key I want you to get out, your listening audience, to get out of it: strategic relationships are not formed overnight. The same way you don't go and get a house built in one day, a car is not built in one day. You don't build strategic alliances in one day. The next is be intentional. Again, this is an arm of the first point. Being intentional. Go back to school if it's necessary. This involves, again, as we spoke about before, asking yourself the hard question. It also involves making a hard decision. Sometimes we have to ask ourselves, am I too comfortable? Am I willing to do what is hard now while it's still easy, in other words, to get promoted to where I want to go? In other words, so if we're talking with someone now and they've been reflecting on that business, then they have the gifts and talent, and you've got every certification, you know that business inside and out, but you haven't acted on it. You need to ask yourself why. Is it because I'm comfortable? Is it because I'm afraid? Is it because I'm scared? Am I seeking the approval of others? Be intentional. That also involves learning what you need to learn about that skill set. Being intentional. You should be the expert in that field. No one should be able to know more about it than you do. Being intentional. Going after with everything that you have within reasonable ability. I know people say all the time, you have to give 110%, but guess what? That's an incorrect premonition, because that would involve you exhausting everything within you plus 10% of someone else, which is impossible.
Exactly.
The next important point, be passionate. It's nothing worse, me being in accounting and finance as well as in the catering field, it's nothing worse than being around someone who feels like they've had a gun pointed to their head and they say, well, I was made to do this. No one makes you do anything. Find out what you're good at. If you don't know, use that time of reflection to put things in a category. What do I like to do? What do I enjoy to do? What do I love to do? Then from there, go and look at certain disciplines or areas of study that relate to those fields. Then from there, look at those things and truly look at what you're doing now. And if you feel that you're on the right track, ask yourself if where you are now, if you're happy where you are now, how you continue to stay on that path. If you're not, how can you make a U-turn without causing a catastrophic, how can I say it, situation financially in your household? I know there are plenty of people that want to go into business for themselves, but guess what? This is not the season. People are losing jobs left and right. If your job is helping to pay your bills and you are passionate about cooking, guess what? At a bare minimum, are you food handler? Are you ServSafe certified? If you are, guess what? Start cooking for people on the weekend. This is not the time for you to go and try to get a $600,000 loan from the bank to get property. You see what I'm saying? Being passionate also involves me doing what's smart.
Absolutely.
But being passionate means you eat it, you breathe it, you sleep it. Again, when we talked about reflection before, what are you thinking about? When you're thinking about these ideas, do you have trouble sitting still because you just want to act upon them? Is that the first thing that comes to people's minds about you? They get around her or you get around him and start talking about X, Y, and Z. That's what they're passionate about. They eat, breathing, and sleeping. And the last point, be sincere. When you are able to amass key relationships with people, don't try to fool people. People see a fraud. People see a fraud from a mile away. People see when someone just wants to have a relationship with them based off of what they have or what they know or what they perceive someone has and what they perceive someone knows. People can spot it a mile away. Be legit. It'll only benefit you and those around you. Because if you're not sincere, then what tends to happen, everyone around you who you got to buy into the vision, you have bankrupted them for their time. So in closing, I would just ask that as we take the time at the end of the year now to self-reflect. Start with self-examination first. And, it's okay to be critical of ourselves, but don't knock yourself down. And if you have been self-examining yourself and you've been overly critical, stop it. Shake the dust off your feet. Go and get some ointment for your cuts. Let's get back in the ring and keep on fighting.
Wow. Honey, you have given us a lot to think about. We're going to have to bring you back on here. We need some more keys to find out how to propel ourselves, not only for 2012, but ongoing. So I just want to thank you again so much for joining us. I want to thank our listening audience for joining us as well. And remember, we are on air live every Wednesday at 6 p.m. I want to thank you for joining us at Extraordinary Life Radio. Thanks again. And for more information, visit our site at www.sadedennis.com.